They mocked the quiet new kid. Big mistake, he's an undefeated champion. Oliver Chen hunched his shoulders as he navigated the bustling hallways of Westlake High School. At 15, he was average height, but carried extra weight that made him an easy target. His round face, accentuated by wire-rimmed glasses that constantly slipped down his nose, gave him a perpetually startled expression. Today marked his third week at this school since his family's move from San Francisco, and so far, the experience had been exactly what he'd feared. A daily exercise in invisibility punctuated by moments of acute humiliation. The worst part wasn't being the new kid. It was being the new kid who didn't fit in anywhere. Oliver had always been quiet, preferring books and computers to sports or socializing. His slightly ill-fitting clothes, always a size too large to accommodate his frame, didn't help matters. Neither did his tendency to stammer when nervous, which was pretty much any time he was called on in class. What nobody at Westlake knew, what nobody here could possibly suspect, was that back in San Francisco, Oliver had been a rising star in competitive judo. He had trained intensively since age 7, under the tutelage of his grandfather, a former Olympic alternate. Oliver had earned his black belt at 13 and had won 3 regional championships in his weight class. The discipline had never been about fighting for him. It had been about honor, control, and tradition. His grandfather had instilled in him that judo was never to be used for showing off or revenge. But what about self-defense? The question had been circling in his mind more frequently lately. "Hey, Tubby, you're blocking the whole hallway." The voice belonged to Damon Wells, a junior who had appointed himself as Oliver's personal tormentor. Tall and lean with a perpetual smirk, Damon was the undisputed alpha of his social circle, which included his 2 constant companions, Tyler Morris, a stocky football player with a buzz cut and a tendency to crack his knuckles menacingly, and Marcus Reed, lankier and quieter than the others, but with a cruel streak that manifested in elaborate, humiliating pranks. Oliver quickened his pace, keeping his eyes on the scuffed linoleum floor. "Just keep walking. Don't engage. It's not worth." "Taz, I'm talking to you, new kid," Damon called out, louder this time. The surrounding hallway traffic slowed as students sensed the potential for entertainment. Oliver felt a hard shove from behind, sending his books tumbling from his arms and scattering across the floor. Laughter erupted around him. His cheeks burned as he knelt to gather his belongings, only to have Damon kick a textbook farther down the hall. "Oops," Damon said with mock sincerity. "Did I do that?" Oliver remained silent, collecting his books with as much dignity as he could muster. His heart pounded, and for a brief moment, he imagined using a simple hip throw to put Damon on the ground. The technique would be effortless. Damon's aggressive posture made him an easy target for someone who knew what they were doing. But Oliver pushed the thought away and stood, clutching his books to his chest. Miss Reynolds, the English teacher, rounded the corner just then, taking in the scene with narrowed eyes. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem, Miss Reynolds," Damon replied smoothly. "Chen here just had a little accident. Clumsy, you know." The teacher looked at Oliver, who nodded slightly, unwilling to escalate the situation. "Well, get to class. All of you," she said before continuing down the hall. When she was gone, Damon leaned in close. "See you at lunch, Pudgy," he whispered before sauntering away with his friends. Oliver took a deep breath, steadying himself. In his previous school, he'd had friends, other kids from the dojo who respected him, who knew what he was capable of. Here, he was just the chubby, new Asian kid who didn't talk much. His parents had urged him to find a local dojo, but between unpacking, settling into a new house, and trying to catch up academically at a more demanding school, he hadn't made it a priority. Maybe it was time to reconsider. The cafeteria at Westlake High was a cavernous space divided into clear social territories. Jocks commanded the central tables, the honor students clustered near the windows, theater kids claimed the area near the stage entrance, and various other cliques had their established domains. Oliver had taken to eating at the far corner table, a no-man's land typically occupied by students who, like him, existed on the social periphery. Today, he sat alone with his packed lunch, his mother's homemade dumplings, which he normally loved but now wished were something less conspicuous. He'd just taken his first bite when a shadow fell across his table. "What the hell is that smell?" Damon's voice carried, intentionally loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Smells like someone died in here." Oliver kept his eyes on his food, chewing slowly. Ignore him. He'll get bored eventually. But Damon wasn't one to be ignored. He slid into the seat across from Oliver, with Tyler and Marcus flanking him. "Seriously, what is that?" He pointed at Oliver's lunch container. "Dog meat," Several students at nearby tables snickered. "They're dumplings," Oliver said quietly. "Just pork and vegetables." "Hear that, guys? It's just pork and vegetables." Damon mimicked Oliver's voice, making it higher and adding an accent that Oliver didn't have. "What's wrong? Can't afford American food?" Oliver felt his face growing hot. His family was actually quite well off. His father was a software engineer and his mother a pharmacist, but he wasn't about to share personal details with Damon. "I like homemade food," he said simply. "I bet you do." Damon reached across and snatched one of the dumplings, inspecting it theatrically before dropping it back into the container. "Looks disgusting." Oliver stared at his contaminated lunch, his appetite evaporating. Every instinct from his judo training screamed at him to establish boundaries, to command respect, but his grandfather's words echoed in his mind. Judo is the gentle way. We don't use our skills to dominate others, only to protect ourselves when truly necessary. Was this truly necessary? He wasn't in physical danger, just being humiliated daily. "Guys, check it out." Marcus had picked up Oliver's backpack and was rifling through it. "What's this?" He pulled out a small book with Japanese characters on the cover. Oliver felt a spike of alarm. It was his grandfather's handwritten judo journal with notes and diagrams that had been passed down to him. It was one of his most treasured possessions. "Give that back," he said, his voice stronger now. Marcus tossed the book to Tyler, who thumbed through it carelessly. "What is this? Chinese or something?" "It's Japanese," Oliver corrected, standing now, "and it's private. Please give it back." "Japanese, Chinese, whatever," Tyler shrugged, tossing the book to Damon, who held it above his head. "If you want it, come get it," Damon taunted, waving the journal. When Oliver reached for it, Damon shoved him back hard enough that he stumbled against the table. A hush had fallen over the nearby tables. This had escalated beyond the usual teasing. Oliver felt something shift inside him, a line being crossed. That journal contained his grandfather's wisdom, techniques passed down through generations. It wasn't just a book, it was his heritage. "Last chance," Oliver said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Give it back." Damon smirked, clearly enjoying having provoked a reaction. "Or what, Tubby?" In one fluid motion, so ingrained that it was almost unconscious, Oliver executed a lightning-fast grab, applying just enough pressure to Damon's wrist to cause him to release the book without actually hurting him. The journal dropped, and Oliver caught it before it hit the floor. The cafeteria went silent. Damon looked stunned, then furious. "You're dead," he spat, lunging forward. Oliver sidestepped, his body automatically assuming a defensive stance, but he caught himself before countering. This wasn't the dojo, this was school, and he didn't want trouble. Instead, he grabbed his backpack and hurried out of the cafeteria, Damon's threats echoing behind him. "I shouldn't have done that," he thought, his heart racing. But I couldn't let him destroy grandfather's journal. The incident in the cafeteria changed something. Word spread quickly that the quiet new kid had somehow disarmed Damon Wells without throwing a punch. Most versions of the story were exaggerated, with some claiming Oliver had used martial arts to flip Damon over his shoulder. The truth was much simpler, but it had shattered his invisibility and made him a bigger target. The following days brought escalating incidents. Oliver found his gym clothes soaked in the shower. His locker was jammed with trash. Anonymous notes with crude drawings appeared between the pages of his textbooks. In class, spitballs regularly landed in his hair. Through it all, he maintained his composure, never retaliating, never reporting the harassment. "It's not worth it," he told himself. "Just get through the year." But Damon seemed determined to provoke a reaction. The embarrassment from the cafeteria incident had wounded his pride, and now it was personal. The confrontation came on a rainy Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks into the school year. Oliver was walking home, having missed the bus due to a meeting with his math teacher. The downpour had cleared the streets and he was lost in thought, mentally reviewing equations, when an SUV pulled alongside him. "Hey, Chen!" Damon called from the passenger window. "Need a ride?" Oliver kept walking, rainwater dripping from his glasses. The SUV accelerated ahead of him and stopped. Damon, Tyler, and Marcus got out, blocking the sidewalk. All three looked menacing, and Oliver noticed with a sinking feeling that they had positioned themselves at the entrance to Parkview Alley, a narrow passage between buildings that was out of sight from the main road. "You made me look bad," Damon said, stepping closer. His voice was different now, colder, without the performative quality it had at school. "Nobody makes me look bad." Oliver glanced around, assessing his options. The rational part of his brain told him to run, but the nearest occupied building was too far, and running would only delay the inevitable. "I don't want any trouble," he said, adjusting his glasses. "I just want to go home." "Should have thought about that before you pulled that kung fu crap in the cafeteria," Tyler said, cracking his knuckles. "It was judo, actually," Oliver corrected automatically, immediately regretting it when he saw rage flash across Damon's face. "You think you're so smart," Damon stepped closer. "Let's see how smart you are after we rearrange your face." Oliver felt a strange calm settle over him. This wasn't just bullying anymore. This was three larger boys cornering him, with clear intent to cause harm. Even his grandfather would agree. This was the time to defend himself. When Damon swung, Oliver was ready. Years of training took over. He deflected the punch and used Damon's momentum against him, executing a perfect foot sweep that sent the larger boy sprawling into a puddle. Tyler rushed him next, and Oliver stepped inside his reach using a basic hip throw that left Tyler stunned on the wet pavement. Marcus hesitated, clearly shocked at seeing his friends taken down so efficiently by the kid they'd been tormenting. "For weeks. You don't have to do this," Oliver said, his stance relaxed but ready. Marcus looked at his fallen friends, then back at Oliver. With a muttered curse, he launched himself forward, arms outstretched to tackle the smaller boy. Oliver sidestepped, grabbing Marcus's arm and using a simple wrist lock to guide him to the ground beside his friends. The whole exchange had taken less than 30 seconds. Oliver stood among the three boys, rain streaming down his face, his breathing controlled and even. None of them were seriously hurt. Judo was about control and restraint, not causing injury, but all three were soaked, muddy, and utterly bewildered. Damon was the first to struggle to his feet, his expression a mixture of rage and disbelief. "What the hell are you?" "I told you," Oliver said calmly. "I practice judo. I'm a black belt and 3-time regional champion in San Francisco." He adjusted his glasses again. "I don't want to fight you. I never did. But I will defend myself if I have to." Tyler and Marcus were standing now too, keeping their distance. The dynamic had shifted palpably. Where moments before they had been predators cornering prey, now they were wary, uncertain. "This isn't over," Damon spat, but there was less conviction in his voice. Oliver simply nodded. "Yes, it is. Unless you want a rematch in front of the whole school." The threat hung in the air, rendered more powerful by its delivery. Not as a boast or a challenge, but as a simple statement of fact. The three bullies retreated to their vehicle, casting glances back at the quiet, chubby boy, who suddenly didn't seem so helpless after all. Oliver continued his walk home, his mind surprisingly clear, despite the confrontation. He had avoided this outcome for weeks, trying to honor his grandfather's teachings about restraint and humility. But perhaps there was wisdom in establishing boundaries clearly and early, rather than allowing disrespect to fester until it erupted into violence. Grandfather always said that the best judo is the kind you never have to use, he thought. But sometimes you do have to use it. The next day at school, the atmosphere was different. Word had somehow spread, probably through Tyler or Marcus, as Damon was notably absent, that the new kid had taken down 3 upperclassmen using some kind of martial arts. The story had morphed considerably in transmission. By third period, Oliver heard a freshman telling someone that he had knocked out 5 seniors with roundhouse kicks. He kept his head down, neither confirming nor denying the rumors, but he noticed people were looking at him differently. The random shoves in the hallway had stopped. Students he'd never spoken to nodded greeting as he passed. A girl from his Spanish class even asked if he'd consider teaching some self-defense moves. At lunch, he sat at his usual corner table, but he wasn't alone for long. A lanky boy with curly hair dropped into the seat across from him. "Is it true?" the boy asked without preamble. "Did you really fight off Wells and his goons?" Oliver hesitated, then shrugged. "We had a disagreement. It's over now." The boy grinned. "I'm Eli. My sister takes jiu-jitsu at Red Dragon Martial Arts downtown. You should check it out. The instructor there is always looking for advanced students to help with demonstrations." Oliver felt something warm unfurl in his chest, the first friendly overture he'd received since arriving at Westlake. "I'm Oliver, and thanks, maybe I will." Throughout the day, similar interactions occurred. Not overwhelming popularity, but nods of acknowledgement, brief conversations, an invitation to join a study group. It was as though he'd suddenly become visible after weeks of existing as a target or a ghost. When Oliver entered his last class of the day, AP Physics, he found Marcus already seated. Their eyes met, and Oliver tensed slightly, ready for hostility. But Marcus just gave a small, almost imperceptible nod before looking away. Not friendship, but a truce. After school, as Oliver was organizing his locker, the principal, Dr. Harrison, approached him. A tall woman with a perpetually serious expression, she rarely interacted with students directly. "Mr. Chen," she said, "a word in my office, please." Oliver followed her, anxiety building. Had Damon or his parents reported him? Was he in trouble? For defending himself. In the office, Dr. Harrison closed the door and took a seat behind her desk. "I've heard some interesting stories today," she began, "about an incident after school yesterday." Oliver said nothing, waiting. "Normally, I don't put much stock in hallway gossip," she continued, "but when 3 students who have frequent disciplinary issues suddenly develop a marked respect for a new student, I take notice." Still, Oliver remained silent, unsure how to respond. Dr. Harrison leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Chen, this school has a zero-tolerance policy for fighting. However, it also has a zero-tolerance policy for bullying, which I have reason to believe you've been experiencing since your arrival." Oliver adjusted his glasses. "I can handle it, Dr. Harrison. I believe you've demonstrated that," she replied, with the ghost of a smile. "But here's what I want to know. Did you hurt any of those boys yesterday?" Oliver shook his head firmly. "No, ma'am. Judo is about control and leverage, not causing injury. I only did what was necessary to protect myself, and I made sure no one was hurt." Dr. Harrison studied him for a long moment. "I see. Well, Mr. Chen, while I cannot condone physical altercations of any kind, I will say that sometimes establishing clear boundaries is necessary." She straightened some papers on her desk. "I've also noticed you haven't joined any extracurricular activities yet. Our athletic department has been considering starting a martial arts club, but we've lacked qualified student leadership." Oliver blinked, surprised by the turn in the conversation. "Are you asking me to start a club? I'm suggesting it might be a positive channel for your skills," she replied. "Under proper supervision, of course. Ms. Patel, our physical education teacher, has a background in karate and has expressed interest in sponsoring such a group." The idea took root immediately in Oliver's mind. Teaching others, creating a space where discipline and respect were valued over physical intimidation. It aligned perfectly with his grandfather's philosophy. "I'd like that," he said, a genuine smile breaking across his face for perhaps the first time since arriving at Westlake. "Excellent. Speak with Ms. Patel tomorrow." Dr. Harrison rose, indicating the meeting was over. "And Mr. Chen, whatever happened yesterday, I trust it won't need to happen again." "No, ma'am," Oliver agreed. "I don't think it will." Damon returned to school the following Monday, a conspicuous absence of his usual swagger. He avoided Oliver completely, changing direction in hallways and choosing seats as far away as possible in shared classes. The dynamic had shifted irrevocably. The predator had discovered the prey had teeth, but it was during lunch on Thursday that the most surprising development occurred. Oliver, now sitting with Eli and 2 other students who had introduced themselves throughout the week, was discussing plans for the martial arts club when a shadow fell across the table. Damon stood there, alone and looking distinctly uncomfortable. The cafeteria quieted as students sensed the potential for drama. "Can I talk to you?" Damon asked Oliver, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Alone?" Oliver considered refusing but nodded instead. "Sure." He followed Damon to a relatively quiet corner near the exit. For a moment, Damon just stood awkwardly, looking anywhere but at Oliver. Then, with visible effort, he met Oliver's gaze. "My dad found out what happened," he said finally. "Not from me. Tyler's mom called him. She's friends with my stepmom." Oliver waited, saying nothing. "My dad was not happy." Damon's jaw tightened. "He said I embarrassed the family, picking on someone smaller, and then getting my ass handed to me when I tried to jump him." He let out a humorless laugh. "The thing is, he's right, it was a dick move." Oliver was taken aback by the unexpected turn. "It was," he agreed simply. Damon nodded, absorbing the confirmation. "Anyway, my dad's making me join that martial arts club you're starting. Says I need to learn some discipline." He scuffed, his shoe against the floor. "So I guess we're going to be seeing a lot of each other." Oliver suppressed a smile at the cosmic justice of it. "I guess we are. I'm not saying we're going to be friends or anything," Damon added quickly. "But no more problems, and I'll tell the other guys to back off too." It wasn't an apology exactly, but Oliver recognized it for what it was. A peace offering, begrudging but genuine. He extended his hand. "No more problems." After a brief hesitation, Damon shook it, then walked away, his shoulders still stiff, but somehow less burdened. As Oliver returned to his table, he felt a strange sense of completion. The cycle of bullying and hiding that had defined his first weeks at Westlake had been broken. not through escalating violence, but through a controlled demonstration of strength that demanded respect without inflicting unnecessary harm. It was, he realized, exactly what his grandfather had been trying to teach him all along. The Westlake Martial Arts Club held its first meeting 2 weeks later, with 15 students, a mix of curious beginners, a few with some prior training, and, to many people's surprise, Damon Wells. Ms. Patel opened the session, then turned it over to Oliver, who felt a momentary flutter of nervousness as he faced the group. "Judo means the gentle way," he began, reciting the words his grandfather had spoken to him years ago. "It's not about hurting others. It's about finding balance, controlling yourself, and respecting both your own strength and your opponent's dignity." As he demonstrated a basic ukemi, a falling technique designed to prevent injury, he caught Damon watching with grudging interest. Their eyes met briefly, and Oliver saw something unexpected, not resentment, but a glimmer of respect. Later, as students paired off to practice, Oliver circulated, offering guidance and adjustments. When he reached Damon, who was struggling with the proper grip, he paused. "Your stance is too narrow," he said quietly. "Like this," he demonstrated, and after a moment's hesitation, Damon adjusted his feet. "Better. Now you're balanced." Damon nodded, the ghost of his old defensiveness flickering across his face before settling into focused determination. "Thanks," he said, so softly it was almost inaudible. As Oliver moved on to the next pair, he felt a sense of lightness he hadn't experienced since before the move. He had come to Westlake dreading the inevitable social hierarchy, resigned to, keeping his head down and his true self hidden. Instead, through reluctant necessity, he had revealed his strength and found not just acceptance, but a place where he could thrive. In the corner of the gymnasium, his grandfather's journal lay, open, the well-worn pages filled with wisdom that transcended mere physical technique. One passage underlined years ago seemed particularly fitting now. "The true purpose of judo is not victory or defeat, but the perfection of character." Oliver smiled as he watched the diverse group of students, former bullies and former victims, alike, working together with growing confidence. He wasn't naive. He knew that one dramatic confrontation and a few weeks of changed behavior didn't erase the deeper social issues that created bullying in the first place. But it was a start, a chance to break the cycle, to create a space where strength was measured by character rather than dominance. And for a 15-year-old navigating the turbulent waters of high school, that felt like victory enough. As the session ended and students filed out, chatting and comparing notes, Eli bumped Oliver's shoulder companionably. "Same time next week, Sensei Chen?" Oliver laughed, shaking his head at the nickname that had already stuck despite his protests. "Same time next week." He gathered his belongings, tucking his grandfather's journal carefully into his backpack. Tomorrow, he would call his grandfather and share everything that had happened. The older man would probably chuckle at the story, then remind Oliver that the most important battles were the ones you never had to fight. But sometimes, Oliver reflected as he walked home under the autumn sun, the battles you did fight changed everything. Not because of the fighting itself, but because of how you chose to use your strength when tested. Balance, he thought, savoring the word that had taken on new meaning beyond its physical application in judo. That's what it's all about in the end. Well, now I want to know, what's your opinion about this story? Leave a comment, we'd love to hear from you. And tell us which city you watched this video from. And it's not over yet. There's another powerful story playing on your screen right now. Click on it. I'm waiting for you.